I'd like to move into presenting my report, which I think all of you will be pleased is going to be brief, because we've already done a lot of listening. But it doesn't foreclose conversation after my report. And I think that the Cape Town chapter, Chris Weed, on behalf of the Cape Town chapter, wanted to say a few words as well. But I wanted to, I suppose the theme for this year's annual general meeting is very much appreciation and thanks. Thank you all for attending the AGM. Thanks to the VC for her welcome address, and to DVC Loretta Ferris for the update on transformation. I also want to thank alumni wherever they're based for their support in 2019, for attending alumni events, and for providing various levels of support. I want to thank all members of the advisory board for committed service to the alumni community throughout the year. And most of all, I also want to thank the Alumni Relations Office, and I can see Liebe hiding in the back there, for their support to the board and to alumni. Although the dedicated team, which is led by Liebe Misanga Bam, is made up of only 4 members, their reach goes beyond their small numbers. And I want to appreciate the team which undertakes the bulk of alumni activities on behalf of UCT. In my opinion and experience, this team is one of the hidden jewels of UCT. Liebe and her team spend their time quietly and consistently reaching out and engaging with our alumni, both at home and abroad, in ways that address their needs, and they deserve a round of applause for the work they do to advance our relationships with alumni. And in the same vein, I think we've got a couple of alumni managers here, including Gabby Ritchie from the law faculty, and also address their interests. So I want to thank all of you for that work. I was very privileged last week to attend the quarterly meeting of all the comms and marketing members of the alumni relations team. And again, that gives a real opportunity to understand what's going on across UCT, because too often we look at things in silos and we only think of our patch, but actually there's a whole world if one steps out and looks beyond one's immediate field of interest. As you know, the enterprise of alumni relations is much more than sending out the odd email. It's about knowing who our alumni are, where they are located, what their areas of expertise and interest are, and forging relationships with them, finding out how they would like to engage with UCT and what they would like to offer UCT in terms of time, treasure, or expertise. And building on last year's theme, which was for me connecting, reconnecting, and reaching out to our diverse alumni, during 2019, the AAB and the Alumni Relations Office have focused on strengthening relationships with existing active alumni whilst reaching out to historically disengaged, predominantly Black alumni who for the most part, sadly, had negative experiences of their time at UCT. This engagement doesn't happen of its own accord. It requires committed volunteers and staff, appropriate investment of resources to support the widest possible engagement with alumni. I want to acknowledge that many of these engagements were made possible through the alumni relations team's enthusiastic and skillful, I have to say, sponsorship efforts. So they didn't actually act as a drain on the purse of UCT. And again, I think that's something which people don't always acknowledge or maybe don't even know. A key indicator of any successful university is how well they engage with their alumni. And the fact that UCT, and the VC mentioned this earlier, continues to enjoy a top spot in the international rankings is in no small part due to the active engagement of our alumni. And I noticed that there was a report just today about, again, a developing countries ranking for universities. And apart from China, UCT is the only African university that figures, and we're number 10. So I think it's actually very interesting, but that having that ranking can't be taken for granted, and there are indicators around community engagement, student experience, and I think that all of us need to work hard to make sure we stay in the top of those rankings. But it's not just a tick box exercise, it's about the human qualities of our relationships that matter. I also thought it might be interesting for all of you to know that we do have 170,000 alumni spread across 121 countries in the world, with an increasing number of our alums coming from the African continent. So I think we very often think of our alumni, mainly South Africa, and then we immediately think of the UK or Australia. And yes, there are a large proportion in the UK, certainly in the USA, but a vast number come from our African neighbours. And I think that what has been encouraging to me is the number of postgraduates from African countries that are now joining us at UCT. And I think as chair of the Alumni Advisory Board, I wanted to make a plea, not just to alumni, but to our UCT colleagues and students, to ensure that we welcome our international students from the continent. Because at the moment, there are really unfortunate issues of xenophobia, which are flaring up in all parts of our country. And I think it's down to all of us to try and ensure that we are inclusive and welcoming and respectful. And many of the postgrads that I've actually spoken to, certainly in the humanities faculty, have some stories to tell about their experiences of not feeling that welcome from time to time. So I think when we talk about UCT, we come from diverse backgrounds, we come from diverse fields, we are different ages, we're different racial groups, faith groups, sexual orientation, gender. But I think what unites us is our passion for UCT. When we talk about UCT, it is about talking in inclusive terms and not actually leaving some people out because they aren't quite one of us. And that really disturbs me, not just here, but in other environments as well. In many of the events that the Alumni Relations Office hosts and which we attend as alumni, I want to acknowledge that our Vice-Chancellor has played a key role in creating an enabling environment for engagement with our local alumni and the broader global community of alumni. And some of us refer to her as the fundraiser-in-chief, or ambassador-in-chief. And many alumni do write to me. I get some hate mail, but I'm pleased to say it's changing. And I've had some very positive emails. actually telling me how they are encouraged to give to the university because of the confidence and high regard they have for the VC. And I just thought I'd say that, and that wasn't the VC didn't know that that was included in my speech, but I think that as chair of the Alumni Board, I get all sorts of correspondence on all number of topics and many complaints. So when I do get some accolades and positive feedback, I really want to share it with everybody. So thank you. Examples of some of the engagements that the alumni have participated in over the year, and I'm not going to give you chapter and verse, I'll just give you an idea of, and give you a flavor of the range. There are events in support of the Vice-Chancellor's initiatives, including the institutional For Women, By Women campaign to celebrate National Women's Month, alumni dinners hosted at home and abroad, alumni lifestyle events ranging from cycling, marathons, golf, jazz, and cars. And I have to say that we did have some correspondence on the cars, but it was very warmly received by many of our alumni who were enthusiastic about running around in a Land Rover, which they would never have otherwise thought of doing. I'm sorry I missed that one. But there are many other lifestyle events, and these usually are stimulated by alumni talking with the Alumni Relations Office, and the Alumni Office then looking to see if they can get sponsorship, and if they can, hosting the event, for example, the jazz or the cars. All of those were sponsored, so again, at no cost to UCT. In addition to those, there are alumni speaker events, book launches, graduation events, the Golden Graduation, which is a really special event which invites people back, almost like a homecoming event, and celebrates and almost gives them an opportunity to undergo graduation yet again at their alma mater. And I was very thrilled to be part of that this year. In addition, there are residence reunions, faculty reunions, the law faculty of which I'm still part, again, very active in ensuring that alumni are kept in touch regularly through reunions, and not just having dinner, but actually engaging in interesting topics of conversation. Also, the Alumni Office provides support to alumni chapters and affinity groups, and I would like to encourage any of you to make contact, if you're not based in Cape Town, to make contact with your affinity group or your chapter, local chapter, and if there isn't one in the area where you are located, set one up, because it's an opportunity to bring people together and to provide support such as mentoring, possibly career opportunities, and exchanges. So that is really a summary of just a few of the really important alumni engagement events that have taken place this year. I was going to talk more also about the fundraising effect organized by the Alumni Office through the Phonathon to raise funds for students in distress, particularly student hunger, but that's already been dealt with. But what I wanted to just tell you was that I'm delighted, and I think I mentioned this last year, summer school has come home to the alumni environment and is now firmly part of DAD, the Development and Alumni Relations team, and going from strength to strength. And as many of you will know, the Centre for Extramural Studies, and Madee Rawle is its director, has been heading that up. And summer school, I think many people always think about as being a place where golden oldies come. And actually it has very little relevance to modern life. But I'm pleased to report that over the past few years, the program has been rejuvenated, and young lecturers and researchers have an opportunity at summer school to explore in a safe environment with alumni new innovations and explorations, so that it really has changed beyond all recognition from my stereotype of what summer school was in the 1970s, 1980s. And I think that bringing it into the alumni domain is going to enable even stronger relationships with our alumni to ensure that the summer school program is relevant and modern and addresses some of the pressing issues that people are concerned about. So welcome back, or welcome to Dad, Mehdi and your team. Looking forward, and in conclusion, I would like to encourage everyone to become more involved in the business of their alma mater, supporting UCT priority projects, initiating chapters or groups in your regions, and encouraging alumni participation in these kinds of events. UCT belongs to all of us, and we need to continue to work together to accelerate UCT's efforts to become an even more inclusive, excellent, engaged, and socially responsive institution. Thank you. Just a few housekeeping matters now. I wanted to say next year's AGM will include elections, and so I would like people to reflect and think carefully whether they would be interested in standing themselves or recommending colleagues or friends. And I think we are very keen, and unfortunately some of our team couldn't be with us today, but we're a very diverse group, and in terms of gender, but also not so much in terms of gender. I'm afraid to say we're female-dominated. But I shouldn't say afraid to say, should I? No, proud to be. But I think that, and also in terms of age, we've been very lucky because our team, apart from me, is extremely youthful and energetic, and I think we would welcome diverse engagement from our alumni, and we'll put out a call for people to put their names forward. Before taking any questions, I thought, Chris Weed, do you want to say a few words about the Cape Town chapter?
Thank you, Diana. There goes my file. Just quickly, I see one other member of the Cape Town chapter, the Alumni chapter, and I apologize to Lawrence because he didn't know I was going to say what I'm going to say. But when I was looking in my diary today and planning the day, in the diary is the AGM, and I thought, hell, what has the Cape Town chapter to say at this AGM? Nothing. And I felt disappointed, underwhelmed, and it has moved me now to say, please guys, let us have more members, make yourself available, tell us what you have to offer. I'm looking at somebody I've spoken to already today, this afternoon, and help us to reinvent the Cape Town chapter, which logically should be the best chapter because it's on home turf, but it isn't. Help us reinvent ourselves, get our profile right, get our thinking right, let it reflect what UCT stands for. Not that we automatically have to agree with everything that UCT says, but please make yourselves available. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you. Another initiative I just wanted to flag up, and I wanted to say thank you to Desiree Goliath, who was a member of the Cape Town chapter. 2 years ago, we held a really interesting and I think path-breaking event in conjunction. This was the alumni group together with the community chest, looking at child soldiers in the Cape Flats. And some people were absolutely blown away. How can we talk about child soldiers on the Cape Flats? And we had a team of experts who actually spoke about what was actually happening under our very noses. And I think we're very keen, and I haven't discussed this with Lebo, but to have some sort of revisit of these issues and to meet up with as a result of that initiative, there's been a lot of peace building amongst young people in the Cape Flats areas. And I think the plan would be to host an event, one of the alumni events, where we could bring together the community chest and ourselves to have an update, but particularly talking to the young peace ambassadors who have been through very challenging times and yet have shown the leadership and the courage to stand up and be counted in their communities. So I just thought I'd flag that as something, and that would be sometime in March. We'll have a conversation about that via the email. But I wondered, before we close, if there were any observations, questions. John?
Very quickly, I'm afraid I have to run, but two quick things. First of all, as someone who retired from the academic staff here 22 years ago, I would like to congratulate, if it's not too improper of me at this stage, the 4 women of the academic executive quartet for the way in which UCT seems to be able to navigate the extremely complex many meanings levels of transformation, and I wish them well. The other thing, I want to raise a question of UCT's investments. It's particularly relevant at the moment, considering the broader question of climate change and the situation of our power in South Africa. And there are numerous associations and organizations around the world who are divesting themselves of all investments in fossil fuels. And I would like UCT to consider this very seriously, if they have any such investments, and with particular local implications that we may once again have an attack on the Karoo and other places for the so-called fracking, the fracturing of gas in sedimentary seams in the Karoo, which to me is in many ways entirely unacceptable, as in many other parts of the world. So that's what I would just like to leave as a suggestion, and I'd be happy to follow it up with any detail if that would be useful. And thank you for the chairing, and I have to leave. Sorry.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Much appreciated. Any other comments, questions?
Diana, just a request. In the minutes of this meeting, would you be so kind as to list the members of the board, just for reference purposes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other? Yes, Lawrence?
I want to just agree with you and Chris to welcome people to become more involved, but to realize it is going to take some time and a bit of commitment, and even living in Cape Town helps, because it has been the case we've had people on committees and then they get scattered around South Africa, all over Africa and far afield, and it's more difficult to then engage. And so there is, and also to have a sense of service, having a sense of wanting to contribute, not sort of coming and saying, well, I've got clever ideas as to how UCT should be run, and I'm going to tell UCT how to run the UCT, but rather to say, how can I be a contribution? How can I make a difference? And that kind of idea. And then it becomes more fun as one is engaged, as opposed to an intellectual debate. One is actually engaging with people and being involved.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Well, I think it really remains for me to say thank you all very much for coming out on this wonderful evening and joining us and participating. Do stay in touch. I do usually respond to emails, and so very happy to have suggestions, comments, and if anyone would like to be more involved, and I think there's been a special plea from the Cape Town chapter, we will funnel through those willing volunteers through to Chris. I think that really just thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.